I'm Megan. Standing in the boardroom of what was once Blackstone Investments, I watched as the shareholders' faces shifted from disbelief to acceptance. The room, once filled with the power and influence of a successful business, now echoed with the weight of my words. I had just announced that Victor, my ex-husband, had been involved in a massive financial fraud scheme and that I, with the majority stake in the company, was taking over. It all started on an ordinary afternoon at a small cafe in the heart of the city. I was sitting on the balcony, sipping a latte, when my phone vibrated. The screen flashed with Victor's name. A sense of unease washed over me, but I pressed answer. Megan. His voice came through, cold and detached. I'm calling to tell you I want a divorce. I've sold Blackstone Investments, and I'm leaving with Stella to start a new life.
Stella.
The name was like a punch in the gut. I had suspected Victor was having an affair, but hearing it confirmed was a different kind of pain. I took a deep breath and replied calmly, Congratulations, Victor. If that's what you want, then good for you. He laughed, a smug and triumphant laugh. You realize you have nothing now, right? The company is sold, and I have the majority of the assets. I smiled slightly. Is that what you think? Maybe you should check again, Victor. I hung up before he could respond, feeling a strange sense of relief. As I left the cafe, my phone buzzed with a message from my lawyer. It was done. Victor couldn't sell what he no longer owned. I had quietly acquired the remaining shares from other investors while he was busy with Stella. I drove home, knowing exactly where Victor would be. He was sitting in his favorite armchair, swirling a glass of whiskey in his hand, a smug grin on his face. Stella was standing by the window, looking nervous. Megan, you're finally home, Victor said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. I assume you've had time to think things over. I placed my bag on the table and sat down across from him. Yes, Victor, and it's fascinating that you think this is already over. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of documents, slamming them down on the table. What is this? Victor asked, his eyes narrowing. The truth, I replied calmly. You should read it before you continue your act. Victor picked up the documents and started flipping through them. His face paled as he read. Stella gasped and stepped back. You can't do this, Megan, Victor said, his voice trembling. I own 55% of the shares. I shook my head. You used to own 55%, but while you were busy with Stella, I acquired the remaining shares. I now control over 60% of the company. Stella turned to Victor, her eyes wide with panic. You lied to me, Victor. You said you had control of the company. I let out a soft chuckle. Looks like he told you exactly what you wanted to hear. Victor clenched his jaw. You're playing a dangerous game, Megan. I stood up and retrieved another set of documents from my briefcase. This is where things get interesting. Do you remember the $1.5 million that disappeared from the company's internal investment fund? And those contracts you signed with a shell company in the Cayman Islands? Victor froze. Stella turned pale. That's called financial fraud, Victor, I said, my voice cold. I have records of every suspicious transaction you've made over the past 3 years. There's enough evidence here to trigger a full-scale investigation by the SEC and IRS. Victor shot to his feet, slamming his fist on the table. You dare? I cut him off. Dare to do what, Victor? Let you start over with Stella while burning everything behind you? Did you really think I was that naive? Stella gasped and grabbed her purse. I don't want to be involved in this, Victor. You promised me everything would be fine. She rushed out of the door, without looking back. I turned back to Victor. Tomorrow, the board will hold an emergency meeting, and you won't be attending. As of now, you're out of Blackstone Investments. Victor stared at me, unable to believe what was happening. I grabbed my bag and walked out of the house, closing the door behind me. Over the next few days, I worked tirelessly to expose Victor's fraud. I sent all the evidence to the SEC and IRS, and I also notified the media. The news spread like wildfire and Blackstone Investments stock plummeted. Investors pulled out, and the company's value dropped by nearly 50% in just a few days. Meanwhile, I was working on a plan to restructure the company. I gathered the loyal shareholders and presented my vision for a new company, one focused on technology and cybersecurity. They were skeptical at first, but I was confident in my plan. In the end, the vote was in my favor. Blackstone Investments was reborn as Phoenix Tech Solutions. The company's stock started to rise, and investors were once again interested in our business. As I sat in my new office at Phoenix Tech Solutions, looking out at the city skyline, I received a message from Agent Miller, the FBI agent assigned to Victor's case. Victor was arrested this morning at the airport. He was trying to flee to Europe with a fake passport. I took a sip of my coffee and smiled. Victor had thought he could betray me, deceive me, and walk away without consequences. But he had forgotten one thing. I was always one step ahead. The best revenge, I realized, wasn't just about destroying the person who had hurt you. It was about rebuilding something stronger from the ashes. And I had done just that.